This is Outnumbered. I'm Andrea Tanteros, and here today, Harris Faulkner, Sandra Smith, Jedediah Bila, and today's hashtag One Lucky Guy, Pete Hegseth, and he is outnumbered.
Yes, I am.
Welcome back, Pete.
It's great to be here. I was in the Midtown Tunnel 20 minutes ago. I'm just glad I'm here.
I know.
Really? Yeah.
So it wouldn't have to be the one lucky guy in absentia.
Absent, yes.
We'd have to beam you in on the phone or something like that.
Be a smartphone.
Glad you made it. Right.
That's right.
All right, we begin with a controversial prisoner swap. The joy at an American soldier's release after years of captivity in Afghanistan, quickly giving way to doubts and fears that some of the world's worst terrorists could be back at work and that more Americans in uniform now have a price on their heads. The White House defending its exchange of Taliban detainees from Guantanamo to free Sergeant Bo Bergdahl. White House Press Secretary Jay Carney insisting this is simply not a case of negotiating with terrorists.
The terrorists are celebrating this, Jay, and in some ways they now know there is a going rate that one American in captivity can win the release of 5 terrorists being held by the United States. Do you worry that that sets a very dangerous precedent?
It is absolutely a situation with a long history and precedent where we engage in exchange of prisoners during an armed conflict. Sergeant Bergdahl was a soldier in our military, and he was being held by the enemy, and that's a situation where you do everything you can to secure his release.
But whatever language the White House is using to defend the prisoner exchange, Republicans like Senator John McCain fuming that America may be paying a steep price here and that some of the most dangerous terrorists just sprung from Gitmo could again launch attacks aimed at killing many Americans as possible.
I think there are legitimate questions about these individuals who are being released and the conditions under which they will be released. These are the hardest of the hardcore. These are the highest high-risk people. And others that we have released have gone back into the fight. That's been documented. So, and it's disturbing to me that the Taliban are the ones that named the people to be released.
Well, the 5 Taliban sprung in the deal, now in the custody of the government of Qatar. But it appears that they will be free to leave after 1 year. And when they are free to go, they will get a sure, warm welcome from this guy, the Taliban supreme leader, Mullah Omar. He's hailing the prisoner swap as, quote, a great victory, saying everyone being held needs to be freed. Now, Pete, I'm going to go to you first on this one. I find this entire prisoner swap story to be appalling, that we would negotiate with terrorists. I saw you over the weekend. You're seemingly pretty outraged as well.
Absolutely outraged. If there's one thing we've never done, it's negotiate with terrorists. The Haqqani network that held him, an element of the Taliban, not perfectly, but an element, was designated as a terrorist organization. This is who held him. And we decide now that the price of an American soldier is 5 Taliban, and not rank-and-file Taliban. These are guys associated with Osama bin Laden and the 9/11 attacks, with deaths of thousands that they're responsible for. And we're now willing to say, well, at the right price, we will negotiate with terrorists. It's not just a dangerous precedent, it is a deadly precedent, because Americans will pay this price, whether on the battlefield or around the world, where they're more vulnerable today than
Harris, if I'm a terrorist organization, if I'm the Taliban, if I'm Al-Qaeda, the first thing I'm thinking right now is, how do I snatch more Americans?
Yeah, I mean, there could be a slippery slope in terms of torturing our guys to try to make an agreeable trade for one side or the other. But I don't concentrate so much on everybody else. I'm looking as an American today, and here is, as an American journalist, the question that I would want to ask this White House, because we covered this as breaking news on Fox Report over the weekend, and we went from calling this guy a hero to learning further details about Bo Bergdahl. And as the facts were coming forth, and all that we now are learning about these 5 killers that they let go, I would say, Mr. President, what made it worth one guy for 5 killers? I mean, that's a bad deal any way around. Is the president a bad negotiator?
He shouldn't be negotiating.
Or is there something else going on here that we don't know about?
I mean, Sandra, I think there's mixed emotions, because you do see an American soldier freed.
Yes.
And so you want to be happy for his family, and you want to be happy that he has his freedom. But again, the message that this sends, 1 in 6 that have been freed or let go from Gitmo have gone back to fight jihad.
And the Taliban, by the way, got to name these
That's right.
terrorists.
These are their hand-picked 5.
Let's not forget that. And as Senator McCain just detailed, these are the toughest of the tough. This is the hardest core of the hardest core. They're back out there. They're back in the fight, Andrea. So There were a lot of rules here that were broken. Congress wasn't given a 30 days heads up. We're now negotiating with terrorists. And John McCain went on to make a further point that that's not even what concerns him the most, Andrea. It's the conditions in which these 5 men are going to be released. And that we have reasonable questions along those lines. And that's what I want to know as a journalist.
Jedediah, would it have really hurt the president to run this by Congress? I mean, he says, I got the power to do it, and he may have the power to do it, but why not run it by the Congress?
He's run everything else by
They're
him.
saying that it was life-threatening, that he didn't have the time. This president seems to not have the time to run a lot of things by Congress is the problem. And Harris, you asked a good question about whether Barack Obama was a good negotiator. In this case, I don't think anyone is a good negotiator with terrorists. I don't think it's possible. And Chuck Hagel is out there saying, well, hopefully this will lead to a breakthrough with the Taliban. I hate to break it to him. That's incredibly naive to think that the Taliban is now going to come and sit down and all of a sudden want to hear what we have to say. Why? Because we gave in to them? They're not going to raise their stakes? Come on, guys.
They're emboldened.
If the president were so moved to go against what we know is conscionable, right in our minds, and he felt like he wanted to negotiate with terrorists, you would hope that he wouldn't capitulate with the terrorists. And so my question is, if you feel like you have to, what would get you to the point where you'd make a bad deal?
You know how I see this? I see this as a piece of a much larger plan.
What else is going on?
To close Gitmo.
Close Gitmo and the war in Afghanistan.
They give him, and draw down the war. It's a fire sale. We're just getting out of there.
Right.
I see these 5 as being very specifically 5 of the most dangerous men that we had there. The president figures, if I can get rid of these 5, then it's politically a bit easier for me to move the others that are in Gitmo and move them to more neutral countries. And then he can, in 2014, before the midterm elections, give something to his base that's very, very upset that he's not, quote, close
I'm
Gitmo.
being asked to get this piece of breaking news in, and this is from Senator Lindsey Graham, who's written a letter now, and Fox is just getting this into our newsroom. We now have the text of a letter to the chair and ranking member of the Senate Armed Services Committee, and here's what it is. Dear Chairman Levin and ranking members, Ranking Member Inhofe, I write today requesting an immediate hearing on the exchange of the 5 high-ranking Taliban leaders for the release of Sergeant Bo Bergdahl. Now, again, this is coming from Senator Lindsey Graham. An immediate hearing and investigation. While I appreciate an American was released from captivity, this decision by the Obama administration has serious implications for our future national security. This story is going on today. This is breaking
It's
now.
only going to get more complicated and only stickier because we're learning more also about Bo Bergdahl and why he left the base, but that'll continue.
All right, and you know what? We're going to actually continue on this topic. So I'm just curious what you're hearing from the military, environment right now. I mean, this has got to be riling a few folks up.
It's riling a lot of people up because when it happened, no one really knew what happened to Bo Bergdahl. There was this. The Taliban said he was drunk and off base. He said in a statement that he had fallen behind on a patrol. Which, if you fall behind on a patrol, you're in a firefight or somebody knows about it. Anybody who's been on patrol knows that. So it was a sticky story. But what was the truth? Because members of his platoon and his unit were told, and rightfully so, not to talk about it until Bo Bergdahl was back home because you don't want to put him at risk. Now they're coming out and talking about the terms of what happened, and man by man are coming out and saying he simply walked off the base. He didn't believe in the mission. He thought Americans were being thugs. There was a lot of anti-American rhetoric coming through in his emails and his statements to fellow members of the platoon, and he deserted. Now, we need to know the details, but the belief of the men closest to him are that Bo Bergdahl deserted his unit. That really complicates
And
the
Pete,
situation.
what does it say? The reports say that these men that served with him have actually broken non-disparagement agreements to get this out there because they feel that it's so important. What does that say that they're willing to do that to a fellow soldier, that they really have a concern here?
Because there's a bond, there's a sense of integrity, there's value and purpose in what they did and the men that they lost. And they don't want the story to be Bo Bergdahl, American hero, if he isn't. If he is, then great. They would give that to him and anybody who's earned it. But if he deserted and didn't believe in the mission, and then they spent months and months looking for him, and now he's being lauded as such, that really complicates the situation. While it might not matter to the public as much, I'll tell you, that unit, that squad, that platoon, that company, that legacy matters. And they're going to step up and do that because they think it's the right thing to do.
Well, here's what pops into my mind then. How much about this did the White House, the Obama administration, know about this young man in terms of his anti-American rhetoric? I mean, how far did they go to get one anti-American back into the country and trade up for 5 anti-American killers?
I just don't think they care. Honestly, I think this is getting the subject off of the VA, getting back to box checking for the base, right? Let's talk about Gitmo. Let's talk about closing Gitmo, as I think this goal is. Let's talk about carbon emissions and a green agenda. All of this, by design, is to accomplish the agenda that President Obama didn't, to appease his base for the 2014 midterms.
If any of those terrorists that were just released come back and inflict harm on our national security, I guarantee you Barack Obama's going to care. That is going to impact his legacy enormously, and obviously would be a horrific occurrence for this country. But that was worth the risk. That was worth the risk.
On that note, there will be a White House press briefing at 12:45. You better believe this will be addressed. Well, hate working? Well, I don't know. We love going to work, actually. But maybe some of you are feeling burned out. You're not alone. It turns out that the way we're working just isn't working. We're going to explain that.